Today, we're going to break down a pretty remarkable fitness transformation. But, more importantly, we're going to dig into the actionable framework behind it. You see, this isn't just one person's story of success. It's a practical guide, a blueprint really, for how you can structure your own journey, at any age. So let's get into it and deconstruct the system behind this success. So where does this story start? Well, it all begins with a massive decision. After 20 years focused purely on endurance sports, Anton Kruger decided at 56 to make a complete pivot to resistance training. Now, this wasn't just a random whim. It was a really strategic choice to build and maintain strength for the long haul. And the results? Well, they pretty much speak for themselves, don't they? Over 2.5 years, he managed to gain 5 kilograms of lean mass. And what's incredibly impressive is that he did this while keeping his body fat percentage at a steady 10%. This shows a really carefully controlled and effective recomposition, not just, gaining weight for the sake of it. But what was the scientific reason for this change in the first place? Well, the key reason comes down to a biological process called sarcopenia. It's something that affects all of us. It's the gradual, age-related loss of muscle. The good news, though, and research absolutely confirms this, is that this process isn't some unstoppable fate. Consistent resistance training is one of the most powerful tools we have to fight it, preserving not just our strength, but our overall metabolic health as well. So, how is all this achieved? We're going to break down the exact 4-step framework he used. We'll kick off with defining clear goals. Then we'll move on to formulating a detailed plan, creating the right identity, which is crucial, and finally, the often overlooked step of reviewing and revising. Right, so these results weren't just a happy accident. They were the direct product of a very deliberate, structured approach. And that's what we're focusing on now, unpacking that system into a clear framework that you can use for your own goals. We're going to deconstruct the system that made all this happen, giving you a clear, repeatable framework that you can adapt for your own goals, whatever they might be. Okay, so the framework starts with step 1, defining your goals. Honestly, this is the bedrock of any successful long-term project. If you don't have a clear destination in mind, any plan you make is really just aimless action. What's so important here is the clarity of the goals. These aren't vague wishes like, I'd like to get stronger. No, they are specific and they are measurable. A target weight of 72 kilos, a body fat percentage to maintain, and trackable increases in key lifts. That kind of specificity makes your progress undeniable, and it keeps you laser-focused. And look, this isn't just a nice idea. It's backed by decades of research, like this cornerstone study by Locke and Latham. It's been confirmed time and again. This simple act of setting clear goals systematically improves performance. It's a psychological tool that sharpens your focus and builds persistence for when things get tough. Okay, once your goals are locked in, you need a system to actually achieve them. And this brings us to step 2, formulating your plan. This is where you become the architect of the daily and weekly actions that are going to lead you to that target. The guiding philosophy here is the theory of marginal gains. It's this really powerful idea that tiny 1% improvements across a whole range of areas, well, they compound over time into a massive overall result. So the point isn't to look for one giant leap, but to find dozens of small, sustainable improvements you can make. And this slide just illustrates brilliantly what a holistic plan actually looks like. It's not just about the training program, right? It's about dialing in your nutrition, optimizing your sleep, managing your mental health, and even seeking out expert guidance. And crucially, it's about tracking your progress with meaningful metrics, things like body measurements and performance, not just the number you see on the scale. This brings us to step 3, and this is perhaps the most profound part of the whole framework: create your identity. A great plan is pretty much useless without consistency, and real consistency comes from shifting your focus from what you do to who you are becoming. This concept was popularized by James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. The idea is that the most powerful changes come from identity-based habits. The goal isn't just to go to the gym. The goal is to become the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. You have to start seeing yourself as an athlete, as a resilient person, well before all the results are in. A really practical way to build this identity is through positive affirmations. It might sound simple, but repeating statements to yourself like, I am an athlete, or I am resilient, genuinely helps to internalize this new way of being. When temptation strikes, your whole decision-making process changes. You stop asking, what do I feel like doing? And instead you start asking, what would an athlete do?
And the answer to that question gives you all the discipline you need. And finally, we arrive at step 4, review and revise. Because let's face it, no plan is ever perfect, and life is unpredictable. This ongoing process is what makes the entire framework adaptable and ultimately sustainable for the long haul. So what does the review process actually look like? Well, it has a few key parts. It's about celebrating those small victories along the way to keep your momentum going. It's about sharing your progress with others to create a bit of social accountability. And it's about having the wisdom to stop and reassess when you hit a plateau, and the flexibility to adjust your nutrition, your sleep, or your training as needed. Really, this step is what separates a short-term diet from a long-term lifestyle change. By building in these regular reviews, you make sure your journey stays dynamic, it stays effective, it stays sustainable, and maybe most importantly, it stays enjoyable.
Okay, let's bring it all together. We've walked through the framework. So what does this all mean for your transformation? And how do you take that first, all-important step?
The core message here is this: a commitment to resistance training, when you combine it with this kind of structured, holistic 4-step approach, can deliver profound physical and psychological results. And that's regardless of where you're starting from. It's a formula for building not just a stronger body, but a much more resilient mindset too.
And let's end on this powerful thought. The potential for change is already in you. This framework, it gives you the map, but the journey itself, it all begins with a single decision. You absolutely have the capacity to become the person you envision. The real key is just to take that first step.